Welcome to another episode of Seeing Them Live, a podcast featuring memorable concert stories from live music fans. Everyone has a concert story, and hopefully, one day, we'll hear yours.
And they talk about this. It was a misty rain. And I don't really know Bon Iver. I think he's very similar to like Neil Young. He has a very high pitched kind of stuff. But listening to them describe their moment at that concert where it was just nighttime, the misty rain, a little bit of fog, and the lights hit it. And they were like, it was religious. And I'm like, dude, I was at Elvis Costello in 1981. You don't have to tell me about religion.
My guest today is Mike Bernard. Mike is an accomplished screenwriter, playwright, and the author of 8 novels, a stage musical, and multiple option screenplays. His work has been recognized internationally through placements of prestigious competitions like the Academy Nicholl Fellowship, Page International Screenwriting Awards, ScreenCraft, Nantucket Film Festival, and various New York and Los Angeles screenplay competitions. Mike began writing during a midlife pivot. His storytelling blends grit, humor, and heart, focusing on beautifully messy, relatable characters. He now lives on Cape Cod, where he wrote Concert Dates, a book about a nostalgic look at the legendary live music scene of the Cape Cod Coliseum in the 1970s and early 80s. Mike, welcome to Seeing Them Live.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that introduction. I didn't know I did half that stuff, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah, you're busy and I would say quite prolific with your novel writing, and we'll get into that in a bit. I have listed here, you have 8 books, is that correct?
Yeah, the way I usually introduce myself is I started writing later in life when all my kids and all my money went off to college. And the house was quiet, and I had a bunch of stories in me and started writing some fiction stories about Boston, and it really about music and about how music affects us all and how lucky we were to grow up at this time of 70s and 80s music. So yeah, I've been busy.
And we'll get into that in a minute because, I want to touch on some of these other books than just the Concert Dates one. But yeah, I love that book, and we'll talk about that in a bit here. Yeah, Mike, I was thinking this might be a Seeing Them Live first, where your first concert, well, technically isn't your first concert. It was a live music event you had to take your grandmother to.
So, dude, I can't believe you're going to throw me under the bus so early into this podcast. No. It's so harsh. So, yes. I wanted to say my first concert was like a really cool, Boston-based Aerosmith, or I snuck out from my parents' house. No, my first concert was I took my first show was, I can't believe you're doing this. My first show was I took my grandmother to see Liberace at the Cape Cod Melody Tent. And oh my God, it was amazing. There was no place to park, because all the grandmothers needed to park closer to the tent. So I had to sneak her in, and she's like, he's a wonderful boy. He lives with his mother. And I'm like, yes, Liberace is awesome, Nana.
Yeah, well, you're a good grandson. I was thinking, like, one of my grandmothers, like one of my grandmothers, my grandma Zona, she was a big Engelbert Humperdinck fan.
Same as my grandmother was too. I think she had tickets to him, and I just said, I can't do it again. I can't do it again.
But yeah, Mike, we're not going to count that as your first one.
Yeah, it was charity. Yeah, I was trying to stay in the will. I wanted to get all the Hummels in the will.
Yeah, but this Cape Cod Melody Tent will end up there too. And one of your last stories, your most surprising stories with the Little River Band. Yeah, your real first concert was, I guess it was in 1979, was it?
Yeah, it was. So my first real concert to see a real band, not a single guy playing on a piano. It was Geils Band. So I'm from Boston. I think Peter Wolf was a DJ in Boston for a while. So anyway, when Geils played at the Boston Garden, I think I was 16 or 17. And it was, an arena filled, the old Boston Garden, sweaty, hot. The thing I remember the most was at the end, they played House Party. And it was the Blow Your Face Out tour. And all the lights came up in Boston Garden, and they dropped all these balloons onto the stage and onto the crowd. And I was just, I don't know how many people it held, 26,000, 30,000. But I was like, this is amazing. So that was my first at 60. That was a bit different from Liberace.
Yeah, because you also list that one as one of your best concerts too, that Jay Giles show. Unless that was a different show where was that a thing? They turned on the lights and you could see the crowd.
Yeah, they just rocked out this big song, house party at the end. So it turned into be a house party at the Boston Garden. But yeah, that was my first concert. And I know we listed sort of like our best and worst concerts. And, I've had time to think about those. I think I may have changed them.
Yeah, because you listen to this Jay Giles album a lot with your friends on 8-track, right?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I graduated high school in 1981. So my musical influence was really the late 70s. And my Jay Giles experiences was much more blues based than in the 80s. They started playing for MTV and they would get like centerfold and freeze frame. And I hate that stuff. My Jay Giles concert experiences were much more blues based. The house party, the Musta Got Lost. They're very Motown based, guitar, rock and roll house party, blow your face out, that type of stuff. And that was all the stuff that I loved. Once they got into the 80s, I didn't see them after that at all.
Yeah, it does seems like a distinction between those two eras, so to speak. But then you also listed this Elvis Costello show at the Cape Cod Coliseum with the setting of your book.
Yeah. So it's funny. I know you give your guests the opportunity to list your best concerts, worst concerts. One of my favorites was Elvis Costello. I think it was 1981 or 82 at the Cape Cod Coliseum, which we'll talk about in the book. And it was just a really cool vibe when he opened up. But I realized my favorite concert, and I just realized this yesterday, in 1990, Don Henley did kind of a tribute or trying to make money for a benefit concert for the saving of Walden Woods, just outside here in Boston. And at that concert in 1990, it was Don Henley, Glenn Frey, Timothy B. Schmit. So you have 3/5 of the Eagles. Before they did the Hell Freezes Over tour, they played Eagles songs. So you had those three. You had Jimmy Buffett, Bonnie Raitt, Bob Seger, Jackson Browne, all were at this concert in Worcester, Mass. They each played I told you already the Eagles, but they each played their own hits. And at the time in 1990, Don Henley had a bunch of hits, Age of Innocence, Boys of Summer, all that. So it was like a greatest hits concert and it was insane. And I forgot about that, which goes to the time. I'm like, oh, that's right. I went to that.
No, that sounds like an incredible lineup. It kind of reminds me, and again, we'll get to your book where you talk about one of the characters has this pentalogy.
Yeah, your top 5.
Top 5 albums. So I started thinking about that and I made this little list and I'm like, oh, wait a minute. After a few days, then you add more.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my God, it's almost impossible to pick 5 unless you were going off to a desert island.
So true. I know. So true. Because it does change. It changes with mood. It changes with, where you are in your life. And then it changes with, am I going to listen to this every day for the rest of my life kind of thing? So yeah, that's what music does. There's standards and stuff that you love. And then you go, oh, but I forgot about that.
Yeah. Cause the Elvis Costello show, you talked about like this blue light was coming from behind him.
The first song they played was Watching the Detectives. And they had this, 5 or 6 people on stage that were him and his band. And they just had this blue light behind them. And so the 5 or 6 of them were just black silhouettes, shadows. And I was like, oh God, just the visual, and this was arena rock that I talk about at Cape Cod Coliseum. So we're all on the floor. We're shoulder to shoulder and just this camaraderie when the lights hit, like all of a sudden the lights dim in the stadium and then boom, they hit you with these blue lights and you just see these silhouettes. And there's this bass riff of Watching the Detectives that opens and you're like, holy shit, it just hits you in the gut. Like, this is awesome. This is music.
Now, it's amazing what lighting can do. I remember because it made me think. I saw REM on their Fables of the Reconstruction tour in a lecture hall at U of I in Champaign. And I had great seats. And yeah, Michael Stipe, he sang this song, South Central Rain.
Yes, yes. Beautiful.
Had this yellow lights behind him and it was like a silhouette. And yeah, it's so moving.
It is. And I'll tell you something else that was really so cool for me. I have 3 kids. They're all into music. My son's a musician. He's a singer-songwriter. He took his sister to see Bon Iver, which is a musical guy these days. But anyway, he took her to an outdoor concert like 2 summers ago. And they talk about this. It was a misty rain. And I don't really know Bon Iver. I think he's very similar to like Neil Young. He has a very high-pitched kind of stuff. But listening to them describe their moment at that concert where it was just nighttime, the misty rain, a little bit of fog, and the lights hit it. And they were like, it was religious. And I'm like, dude, I was at Elvis Costello in 1981. You don't have to tell me about religion.
So that Cape Cod Coliseum, which we'll talk about more in a bit, well, it's like an old hockey rink, right?
Yeah, yeah. So the Cape Cod Coliseum was built. So in the early 70s, New England, everybody was building hockey rinks because you had the big bad Bruins. Okay. Bobby Orr, Phil Esposito, they won the Stanley Cup, 1970, 72. So hockey was this huge phenomenon again. They started building rinks. So they built a hockey rink on Cape Cod, which is we're about 80 miles east of Boston. We're an ocean town. So anyway, they built this hockey rink and they said, we're going to have minor league teams play here in the wintertime. And I think it held like 15,000, 18,000 people. So in the winter, it was great. They could get minor league hockey teams playing there. But then in the summer, they're like, well, this place is empty. What are we going to do with this thing?
Yeah.
So Don Law, who was a local promoter, people up here would recognize the name Don Law Presents, which is on everybody's ticket stub. Don Law said, I can get acts to go play down there for you in the summertime. So they turned this arena into a stadium for music. If you see the movie, oh God, it's the Cameron Crowe movie, Almost Famous.
Famous, yeah.
Same idea. Arena rock, anything in the 70s. So it was the same type of idea. You're standing up front near the band. They put plywood over the ice and the acoustics were terrible and the heat was unbearable. And it was probably the greatest shows you'd ever see. It was amazing.
Yeah. I looked up that guy, Don Law, because I think you mentioned him in your book. He's the chairman of Live Nation, apparently.
Huge. I mean, this guy started all the music concerts back in the 70s. Every ticket stub that you had said Don Law Presents.
Apparently, he's still doing his thing. But now, so your most surprising is back at the Cape Cod Melody Tent, where you're watching the Little River Band live. And it looks like they play there, I don't know, almost every summer in July, it looks like. I looked up.
Yeah. The Cape Cod Melody Tent, and I know we keep referencing the book, but it's sort of like its evolution. Bands start off, they're doing like small venues, maybe coffee houses, then they graduate. And then, hopefully they make 2 arenas and then huge stadiums. And then they go back to like nightclubs and small venues. And so we call the Cape Cod Melody Tent kind of the back 9 of somebody's career. I've seen a ton of concerts there, but they're all like at the end of their career. It's the 4 tops were there, but there's only 2 of them now. So they have the 2 tops. I saw Huey Lewis in the news and this and that. So Little River Band is a great example of a band that will fill the Melody Tent, but will not have a big showing anywhere else. So last year we went to go see the Little River Band and we just get tickets. I don't even know if I know any of the songs, but anyway, I get there and I'm like, wow, I recognize a bunch of these songs. And the funny story was the Melody Tent is small and it's circular. It's like a circus tent. And the stage actually goes around, right? So, it takes about 30 minutes or something for the guy to fully circle. So Little River Band is playing and the guitarist is playing his solo. I don't even know if Little River Band has a song that has a guitar solo with it. And he's going around in a circle and he's throwing out guitar picks as he's going around, right? And it's August, so it's hot. I'm wearing shorts. And the stage starts circling. He's in front of me and he tosses his guitar pick into the stand, comes my direction. I look down and there's a guitar pick stuck to my thigh because it's hot and it's stuck. Now, the only thing I could think of is if this were Bruce Springsteen or Bon Jovi or anyone, the crowd would be diving at me right now trying to get the guitar pick. Well, they didn't. They were all like repulsed. So I take the guitar pick off my thigh, like pull it back off, and I point it to the guitar player. And I go, you want this back? He's like looking at me like I'm the luckiest guy in the world. He's like, no, dude, you keep that. You keep that guitar pick. I'm like, this isn't great. And I went home, I took a picture of it. It says Little River Band. I think the guy's name is Eddie. I don't even know. And I'm like, dude. And I'm calling all my friends. I have a guitar pick from Little River Band, dude. Huh? It was on my leg.
Oh my God. That's a good one. So yeah, and this place, this Melody Tent, I looked it up, holds like 2,300 people.
Oh God. Yeah, I was off by the numbers. Yeah, it's small.
Pretty small. I mean, that's off the internet. I don't know how accurate these are sometimes. So yeah, it's a small venue. So yeah, we started at the Melody Tent with Liberace, and we ended up with the same place, Little River Band.
We're going full circle. I'll tell you something. Like, I've seen a bunch of people at the Melody Tent because it's just as you age, you go see them. And the funniest story was a couple years ago, I saw, who's the old singer? Frankie Avalon, who with Grease, right? It was Frankie Avalon. And he's singing, and the stage is going around very slowly. Halfway through the song, he goes, will you turn this goddamn stage off? I'm getting dizzy.
I could see that. I'm thinking, man, if it was going like really slow, it's almost like you're on a boat.
He's like, turn this off. I'm going to throw it.
Oh man. Yeah, I could totally see that. Hi, this is Charles Zona, and we're glad you are enjoying this episode of Seeing Them Live. If you would like to be a guest on the podcast, please fill out the form on our website at seeingthemlive.com. Also, if you like the show, please give us a rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And now, back to the show. So, Mike, we could maybe jump into your book here. The book's called Concert Dates, and I can't tell you how much I enjoyed that book. Anybody who is into music and goes to a lot of concerts, and again, even if you don't, it's still a great read. But man, you took me back to my friends from high school and the shows we would go to and the crazy things we would do and the stories. And yeah, I felt like I was right there with these characters, and just made me think and look up things that I had done back during this time period. Yeah, I guess the book is set up as like a video diary, sort of, Mike.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, thank you for reading it. Thank you for those comments. I hope that a story like this resonates with people and it makes them realize how lucky they were to have the music we had, and also how lucky they are. Hopefully they have good friends that they can rely on, but maybe reach out to an old friend you haven't talked to in a long time is the hope. So yeah, it was a really fun story to write. I wrote it, if anyone else out there is familiar with Daisy Jones and the Six, it's all written in interview form. So it was very different for me. I write fiction. And, you write sort of like storytelling. It's basically six people that meet at a concert when they're 15 years old. And now we're going to follow their life, but they're going to be interviewed because one of the characters' daughter is getting married. So they're doing sort of a video diary. Okay. So you've got these six characters that are going to sit and be interviewed and tell the story of how they met and how their lives changed and all the changes that they went through. Yeah. And then they end up at the daughter's wedding. So it's written in interview form. I have each of the characters sort of tell their side of the story, how they met, and it travels their lifespan from 15 to 66 or 65. And so how the music changed, how their styles changed, how their relationships changed. It was really fun for me because I just turned 63. And like you said, Charles, it's right in our wheelhouse, man. It's like, these are the friends we made in the parking lots.
Yeah.
These are the people we went to the concerts with. This was the song we listened to. These are the girls we couldn't get. These are the guys that we liked. So it's just a really fun sort of universal story.
And there's 5 main characters or so. And then, the daughter that's getting married, she kind of comes in at the end there. The setup and the description of the Cape Cod Coliseum, the bad sound system, the hot, steamy inside the place once the show's going on, the great bands, and the parking lot scene. The one character, sometimes he goes to the show and sometimes he just sits in the parking lot,
He never makes it in. I mean, that was the thing about the Cape Cod Coliseum. It was built like in a little dirt area. So the parking lot was where the party was. That's where the parties are, at most of these concerts, right? But back then it was like a little mini Woodstock. And that's where relationships were formed. People would meet up before and after the concerts. Like you said, sometimes they didn't even go into the concert. It was more fun just hanging out in the cars. But what was really cool about the Cape Cod Coliseum, and when I did the research for this book, some of the bands that came through this venue are the who's who of rock and roll, okay? So this venue was open from 1972 to 1983. So think about classic rock. That's your 1972 to 83, okay? They had from Ray Charles to Leonard Skinner was opening for Jeff Beck, okay? Van Halen, when Eddie Van Halen was like 21 years old, 22 years old, they were just starting out. They opened for Black Sabbath, okay? You had Peter Frampton play there in 1976. That was his huge Frampton Comes Alive album. I saw Talking Heads, The Clash. So you had the early 80s bands that came through there. Jay Geils went through there like 12 times. So you had a who's who. Sly and the Family Stone were there. Like, it was amazing. So you had this who's who that came through this little hockey rink, right? And they would blow the doors off the place. And you didn't realize how lucky you were, probably because you were delirious because it was so hot. Like, literally, you were dying of sweat. Then you'd finally go out to the parking lot. And that's where the party was. But one thing I wanted to mention, Charles, which was really cool. I know you've had a lot of guests and everybody talks about they have their ticket stubs. They keep this paraphernalia from the concerts. Okay, I have posters. They're in the book, right? So you'll see like Seals and Crofts, Marshall Tucker, Peter Frey, they all were opening acts. Billy Joel was an opening act. So they have posters for these concerts and listing who's playing. And then at the bottom of the poster, it would say, for those 18 and over, 1 free beer with admission. What could go wrong? They're giving beer to you as you walk into the concert. I mean, what a great time to be alive.
Yeah, I saw that, and one of the characters mentions it in the book. But yeah, that's kind of a crazy benefit, I suppose, right?
Yeah.
1 free beer. Wow.
Those were the days.
Wow. Yeah, it's like, going to see somebody at the United Center now, it's like $22 just for a beer.
For a beer. And these tickets too, you look at those stubs, I think they were $4.50,
Yeah.
maybe $12, but $8 seemed to be the range. But yeah, you can't even afford to see a show now, really.
Yeah, because at the beginning, and I think throughout the book, you list the bands that played that year and stuff.
Yeah, at the beginning of each chapter, I'll break it down, who played in, 76, 77, 70. And then, I follow their stories, 80, 81, and then they sold the place. And just look at how music changed from 73 even to 81. And then you have the 90s. One of my favorite parts in that book is when, and I won't give everything away, but, they're in the car and someone's pregnant and they're afraid. They're running to the hospital and they can't find a CD to play good music because it's the 90s. And they're like, oh, the music sucks. I can't find a good CD to play. And then they go, call your friend. He'll know what song to play.
I highly recommend this book. This is a really good book to check out. And there are pictures in there. And yeah, it was funny. As I was getting towards the end of the book, there's like what you'd call candid shots of people hanging out in the parking lot and stuff. And they're credited, I don't know if all of them were, but some of them were, to Rudy Childs, who I mentioned to you, he was a guest on Seeing Them Live.
Yeah, it's amazing. So Rudy's a great guy. Been to a million concerts. He's an award-winning documentary filmmaker. So what's interesting with this is when I was doing research to write this book, there's a Facebook page down here on Cape Cod, and it's called Cape Cod Coliseum Remembered. And that was part of my inspiration for writing it. I saw that it had, like 5,000 members or something. I'm like, wow, there's a lot of people out there. So I put this posting up on the Facebook page and I said, hey, I'm writing a book. If anybody has any stories or pictures, I'd love to hear from you. That was probably a mistake because I got calls like, hey, man, I'm still in the parking lot, dude. If you could come pick me up, or hey, man, I could fill your pages. I get stories. So I weeded those out. And then I found Rudy Childs. And Rudy was a dude that he was just a concert goer. He went to concerts and he would take pictures with an old Kodak Instamatic camera, right? And he would go to a photomat, have them developed, and he has thousands of pictures. And luckily, he had a ton from the Cape Cod Coliseum of people in the parking lot of the concert itself. He's got, Tom Petty, he's got Ozzy Osbourne, he's got a million great pictures. So the funny story, Charles, is I called Rudy and he had reached out to me and I said, yeah, I'd love to see some of the pictures. So I go to his place and he's got the computer up and he's scrolling through all these pictures from the Cape Cod Coliseum. It's like boom, boom, 1978, 79. He's just sort of like scrolling. And at one point I go, wait, stop. I go back. And he goes back to a couple of years. Like, holy shit, that's me.
Wow. Really?
It was my buddies. And it's in the book. You'll see, I think I credit underneath. It says BC High Boys. It's my friends. That's us at the Clash concert. I'm like, oh my God, dude, you have me and my friends. He would just walk around the parking lot and he goes, I know it sounds creepy, but I would walk around and I would just take pictures, but it would he was into photography.
Yeah.
And now he's got all these candids and I go, oh my God, that's me and my friends. Isn't it crazy?
Yeah. Rudy, he ranks up there the top craziest concert stories you might ever hear.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. He did a lot of heavy metal stuff, some crazy. He's met everybody. Crazy.
Yeah. And just the way he would try to get backstage and do all these crazy things. But yeah, his episode's called Tossed by Sharon, Rudy's Ozzy Encounter.
Oh, I love it.
His stories are fantastic. But you've got 7 other books you've published. And was one just recently then, Mike?
Yeah, I've got one that just came out 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, right. Okay.
That one just came out. It's available. They're all available on Amazon. Or you can look at my name, Mike Bernard. But all my stories are fiction. As I said, I'm from Boston. So they're all very Boston-centric, very Irish Catholic, guilt-ridden, passive-aggressive mother family dramas. But I've got sort of a Boston trilogy. So if you're familiar, same thing would play in Chicago or anywhere where there's a tight-knit community, triple-decker houses, think Goodwill Hunting, those types of backgrounds. But my stories are all about family dynamic. There's one story that I think your audience would really enjoy beyond concert dates. It's the book called Crossing the Sagamore, which is very heavily influenced from music, 8-track tape, bunch of guys hopping in an old 74 Bonneville and driving cross country to get their friend's body and bring it back to Cape Cod. That's got a lot of music. That was sort of the preamble to write concert dates. But I enjoy writing family drama, family dynamic, kind of romantic comedies.
Yeah, because in some interviews I listened to, which you're talking about various books, you frame it that you kind of went about it backwards, sort of. You had great success with these screenplays, but you wanted more control, right?
Exactly. That's really more freedom, more freedom. Screenplays are very formulaic. This has to happen by page 10. This has to happen by page 20. It's all a formula. It has to be 90 to 110 pages. Anything more than 110 pages, they're not going to read. So it's very structured and it's very dialogue driven. And so, yeah, my first 4 stories I wrote as screenplays. It was just easier for me. It gave me the bones of the story. So I knew beginning, middle, and end. And so then I wrote this one story, family drama, kind of funny story about brothers and sisters growing up in the same house and how you're so different. And so I wrote that screenplay and a producer I was working with said, you should make this a novel. I'm like, oh, I don't have the patience. I'm so ADD. No, it's so long. And they go, no, try it. So it was very freeing. It allowed me to just go deeper with every character, go wider, write about what they're thinking, write about the descriptions more, rather than just, guy enters bar, says this, boom, boom, boom. So yeah, so they started as screenplays and then I published them as novels. And for me, it's just been great just to get my stories out into the universe. I mean, you read Concert Dates. That's phenomenal for me. I got some guy in Chicago that read my book and I'm doing a podcast now. I'm like, how cool am I?
Yeah. But your screenplays, you're quite successful with that, what I understand.
Yeah, I've been fortunate. I've optioned 3, but it's a whole different game. Hollywood, I've got a chance to get one of them made that I think has the best chance of getting made. But I've been out to California. I've done the meetings. My kids were like, when are we moving to Hollywood? I'm like, don't butter your popcorn yet, kids. I'm just happy to have the novels to get to an audience so that people can read them. I don't know if any of them will ever be films. I think that's a goal. And if they get developed into movies, then maybe a wide audience can enjoy the stories. but I'm not going to wait on it because I've been to the meetings. I've been to Hollywood. They need the money to get the actor. They need the actor to get the money. It's out of my world. It's out of my world. But, I've been able to option screenplays. So if they get made, you'll be the first guy I call, dude. We'll be on.
Yeah, getting into the meetings and the room with these people. I mean, that's about as far as you can take it. Yeah, until they really eventually go through with it. But I mean, that's a huge success, I would imagine.
Yeah, I got lucky with this. Crossing the Sagamore was my first screenplay. So it got optioned, but it was sort of like a drug. Like I go, oh, wow, I got optioned. But, everybody said, well, you've been optioned, now go write something else. You got to keep writing.
Yeah.
So I go, well, I already got one option. What do I need to do that for? They go, well, you got to keep writing. So yeah, I got lucky. And if they get made, that's awesome. But look, I'm 63 years old. I started writing like 10 years ago. Like I said, when the house got quiet and I had no money. So this is my third act, I guess. And so I'm really happy to be doing things like this and getting my stories out there at 63, right? I started writing in my 50s and I love telling these stories. I love talking about my characters and music. Guys our age, man, we got a lot of stories. And I think it's very universal. In my books, everyone is going to see someone they know, whether it's themselves, their parents, their brother, their friends. You're going to know it's all universal. They're fun, funny, easy reads. I'm not that smart, so I don't have a lot of big words. So it's just fun for me.
The dialogue, it's very relatable. And yeah, I would definitely want to check out Crossing the Sagamore. I'll be picking that one up because, like I said, I really enjoyed that Concert Dates book. And I highly recommend people go and check it out because it's great, especially if you're a live music fan. You will not be disappointed. Well, Mike, anything else you want to chat about or plug or? Yeah, I saw you on Amazon. So yeah, all of your stuff's there, all your books, bio.
Yeah, all my stuff's on Amazon, Mike Bernard. And I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. I love the fact that you read my stuff. And I think everybody would enjoy it. And hopefully one day we'll see it at the movies.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Hopefully.
Until then, we'll just keep listening to music.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Mike, thanks so much for taking time and being on Seeing Them Live and staying up maybe a little bit later.
Like, dude, back in the day, I'd be going out at this time. And now it's like, what? 9?
Yeah, I know.
Oh my God, I'm an hour past my fit.
Exactly. My friends and I, we'd just be going out at 10 or something. Is insane, but
I know.
Not anymore. But yeah, I really appreciate it. And check out Mike's books on Amazon. And thanks again for being on Seeing Them Live.
All right. Thank you so much.
That's a wrap for our show. I want to thank today's guests for sharing their concert stories with us. Make sure to check out our show notes at seeingthemlive.com for links to websites, photos, and other artifacts mentioned in the show. I also want to thank my producer, Doug Florzak. The theme music for the show was composed by Doug and is featured on his album, Flagstone. If you have a concert story you'd like to share on our podcast, please visit our website and click on Become a Guest in the main menu. Then fill out the form and click the Submit button. If you seem like a good fit for the show, we'll contact you via email. I guess it's time to head for the exits. We'll see you next time on Seeing Them Live.